Well, welcome. My name is Cheryl Young, and I want to welcome you to our discussion about our emotional roller coaster ride that we take after our stroke. There's nothing more thrilling and frightening at the same time as stretching out of our comfort zone when we choose to. What I've learned in working with clients after their strokes is that living with all the new uncertainties and emotions that you have after a stroke can sometimes feel just like you're on a continual roller coaster ride. There are many ups and downs and twists and turns that come up unexpectedly throughout the day. And unfortunately, life after a stroke often means learning to live with these unexpected emotions. We have to learn to coexist with the unknowable, the unpredictable, and the uncontrollable that follow an event like a stroke, and our emotions take that ride with us. There are two types of emotional reactions. The biological is more of the physical type of emotion that may be the impact that the stroke has had on you physically and create some limitations. The psychological, however, is the impact that we have on our mental and our emotional health that can be sometimes more lasting even than the biological effects of the stroke. So let's talk about the biological feelings that we may experience after our stroke. The first one is emotional lability. It's also called reflex crying. It's kind of when you're going about your day and all of a sudden you just start crying and tearing up for no reason. It's also sometimes we see some changes very quickly in our moods. We're laughing one minute and then right away we start crying and it's uncontrollable. We don't have any control over that. It just happens. Those are both examples of some limitations or some effects of the stroke from a physical standpoint. And especially when our crying and our laughing don't exactly match the situation that we're in or our mood. We may be crying when we really think something's funny and we feel like we should be laughing. So it's a little bit unsettling. The feelings of sadness, I've heard clients express this as just a real heaviness that they feel, feeling hopeless or helpless, not really being able to see your future or past the present moment. Being irritable is both a physiological and a psychological experience. And I've seen changes in eating and sleeping, and of course our thinking, but sometimes just not feeling like eating or unable to sleep and having our mind just wander often are common experiences that I would put under the biological category for emotions after a stroke. So let's talk about some of the psychological emotional reactions. And I say all of these are completely understandable and should be expected. Frustration with not knowing what to expect, especially when you may have had a pretty routine life and then all of a sudden this interrupted all of that. So frustration, completely understandable and explainable. Anxiety, I think our anxiety comes with when we have some an unexpected event like a stroke. And that anxiety comes from fear. When we're fearful of things, we start building anxiety. And that can be expressed in anger. Often anger comes as a secondary emotion. It's usually there's something underlying that. And I would say that kind of starts with frustration, anxiety, and building into anger. Apathy, or not really even caring what happens next, feeling out of control anyway, so who cares? Lack of motivation, kind of knowing what you want to do, but no motivation to make that first step towards it. That first step is always the hardest one. And again, depression and sadness, I would say I see that probably the most common. And we're going to talk a little bit more in detail about both anxiety and depression, since those two tend to be ones that present themselves most frequently. But depression can show up in a lot of different ways. It shows up as fatigue. It can show up as a heaviness, a weight. the lack of motivation, all these things really can be symptoms or signs of depression. So let's talk about decisions on how to manage your health, illness, and relationships. They really include, they really involve 3 different steps. The first one is acknowledging that this did happen. Sometimes we want to, we're in such shock that we don't really even know that what happened, and we're still doubting kind of what actually did happen. So acknowledging, what you're hearing from the medical professionals, that this in fact did happen. And the second step takes a little longer to get to, and it takes usually a daily intentional practice, and that's accepting. And I don't want you to hear me say that you're liking it. Accepting it doesn't mean defeat. Accepting it means that you're accepting that this in fact did happen. You've got to, when it's raining outside, you've got to look out the window and say, yes, it is in fact raining. You may not like it because it interrupted your plans to go out and have a picnic, but you have to accept the fact that it is raining. And then eventually getting to appreciating. And appreciating takes quite a while, I think, to get to that point. I work with people with chronic illness, and sometimes this comes quickly. People recognize that it's causing them to stop and put things in priority and understand what's important. But sometimes it takes years to get to the point of understanding and appreciating what's going on. And this all has to happen in the presence of uncertainty. So again, I mentioned the word intention. This doesn't just happen. And if you're waiting for it to happen, it won't. You've got to intentionally plan for it. So I mentioned the 3 steps towards acknowledgement, acceptance, and then eventually appreciation. We'll go one by one. The first step is acknowledgement. Again, you need to identify what is real and what is fear. So sometimes we hear what we hear, we kind of manifest in our mind and allow it to grow on its own. We need to really pause, and we're going to talk about that also in a little bit, but allowing yourself to pause and really say, what is real and what is it that it's coming to me because of fear and the unknown. So if you can allow yourself to do that, and often it helps at this point to talk to someone about it. Speak out your fears and talk to them with a friend or a medical professional. That really helps to help set the tone for what is real and what is fear. The second step, I mentioned acceptance. And that's manage, not controlling. We're not going to control these, but we're going to manage them. Your feelings, your thoughts, and your symptoms. And as I said earlier, you're not going to like it. We don't have to like it. But until we accept it, we aren't going to be able to manage it. So it's important to know that all you have to do is accept it. And don't think you have to like it or want it. But to accept it is very important. And our third step towards managing our emotions after stroke would be appreciation. And as I mentioned, this comes in different times for people. It's certainly not expected to be right away, but what I hear often from clients and people I work with who've suffered an event like a stroke is that over time they learn to appreciate what's important and set priorities. They're able to make choices of what they want to live with and let go of things that don't serve them anymore. Oftentimes things that like fear early on or was a self-protection, and it served you for a while, but to let it go when it's no longer serving a good purpose for you. Letting go of people who aren't supportive and encouraging, learning to do those things creates a sense of appreciation. And it's very common that once you right immediately after you experience an event like a stroke, you may feel better because all of a sudden things look like they're better, and then all of a sudden unexpectedly there's a change, and all of a sudden everything's not okay. You've had a chance to feel good for a little bit, and now you're saying, oh, wait a minute, I'm not back to quote unquote normal. And just know it's okay to not be okay. These are to be expected. And my hope for you is that the awareness of this will help soften some of these unexpected changes that you may or may not experience if you are the person who having suffered the stroke, or a care partner or family member of someone who has recently had a stroke. So we're going to talk about two of the most common emotions that come. These are the psychological effects of the stroke. And two of the most common are depression and anxiety. So post-stroke depression, as I mentioned, is the most common that I see, and it's also supported by some research that shows 5% to up to 67% of individuals definitely suffer depression. And what we know is that after any traumatic event, depression usually follows. So it's key to keep yourself in tune to that and be aware of the feelings that you're experiencing, and be sure and talk about it with a family member and a medical professional. The study that I referenced looked at this over a 5-year period, the depression, and found that depression resolved usually in over 50% of the participants over a 5-year period, which is very encouraging. And I'd like to also encourage you that the more you acknowledge, accept, and appreciate depression is where you can come into managing it. So acknowledging that, gosh, this is really pretty normal to experience this depression. What am I going to do about it? I'm going to acknowledge it. I'm going to accept it and know how to start taking steps to relieve myself from it. And post-stroke anxiety, again, comes along with the unknowing, the unpredictability, the shock of having a sudden event like a stroke. So the excessive worry and anxiousness, again, these might have served you in a positive way immediately after, because that's your protection, your self-defense. But shortly after you're getting stabilized and they're releasing you from medical care, it's time to say, do these really serve any positive benefit for myself? Those are just things that will cause fatigue and more depression. So pay attention to if you're having excessive worry or anxious thoughts. Lack of concentration is understandable because our minds are filled constantly and going a million different ways. I call it, our monkey mind, or our inner chatter. And there are ways that we can control that a little bit, again, with intention. And I'm going to share some of those practices towards the end of this presentation. Restlessness, irritation, and all those things can, of course, lead to lack of sleep or hard time falling to sleep. So some of the tips I'm going to give you at the end of this will hopefully help relieve some of those symptoms. And just know, I'm not sure where each of you are, but immediately after your stroke, you may respond differently than a few weeks or months later. This is a roller coaster ride. Remember, we're experiencing our mind and our body are coming together and to stabilize. So it is going to take some time, and it will be ups and downs and twists and turns. You've had a trauma to your brain and to your emotional well-being. As I mentioned, it's both physical and psychological. And so my hope is to pull those two together and have a whole healing. It takes time to stabilize and reconnect the mind, body, and spirit. It just takes some time, and that time served with intention and practice will bring you to a wholeness. So some of these things are possible changes that may have occurred since your stroke. These are the unpredictable things, the things that were unasked for. I'm sure your daily routines may have changed. I think all of our routines have changed now with COVID-19, and I've witnessed a lot of people have had suffering a lot of the similar emotional roller coasters. We like routines. We like to compartmentalize, typically we like to know what's next. So that daily routine and predictability, I'm guessing maybe it changed. Mood changes, as I mentioned, and our hopes and our plans for the futures. We thought we had it figured out. Our plan A is no longer in effect. It's time to look for plan B. What's next? And I'm wondering also about your intimate relationships, your close relationships with friends or family or a partner. How have you changed that? Not only physically, but relationally, as far as communication and time you're spending with them. And we cannot not mention COVID-19 and quarantine, along with all the other unsettling events our world is experiencing right now. All these things, I'm guessing, have created some change and unrest for you. But I'm wondering what's stayed the same. And in this category, I've included, your family, a desire for the future, and maybe your appreciation for the family and those who have supported you through this. All these things to me represent hope. And so to acknowledge and accept and appreciate these things help highlight the hope for your future, to help hold on to something to look forward to. So we're going to go back to what do we do with all these unwanted symptoms, these unexpected, unpredicted symptoms that have come along, unasked for. And we're going to go back to the first thing. We're going to acknowledge, recognize, and notice them. You don't have to do anything more than that. Just notice them. That awareness will that simple awareness will do enough to help bring it to your forefront and help you build some acceptance. Accepting it, and if you have concerns after you acknowledge them and you have some concerns, to be sure and communicate that with people. Don't hold that in, because that builds its own life of its own. So make sure that you accept it, and then this will help you tease out what's real and what is fear that has been developed. And then appreciate it. And I can't tell you how much I've heard this from clients. Try not to isolate. That's the first thing you want to do, is stay home and stay safe. And I had one person say they wanted to stay in their room all day and not leave their room. They felt safest there, but that's only going to foster all the unhealthy emotions that are going to create that loneliness and build on the fear and anxiety. Some practices you might want to think about incorporating. I hate to add more to your day, but it's sometimes with a new diagnosis like a stroke, it's important to kind of keep track of what's going on. And I like to recommend just even a 1-sentence journal, because I don't want you to focus like you had a stroke, you are not the stroke. So we don't want to focus a whole lot of attention all day, every day on I had a stroke and now what's next, and build that fear. So I don't want to spend a lot of time other than just maybe write down 1 sentence at the end of the day, how your day went, what the weather was like, if you had any symptoms or feelings or something unusual, but don't spend a lot of time. And this journal will help when you go back to see your provider to kind of have a track record of how it's been over the last month, 2 months, or 3 months, whatever the duration between those appointments are. And it'll also help you reflect and see, I had some good days mixed in with the bad. It's not all bad. I'm encouraging you to also find some quiet time. I mentioned that monkey mind earlier, how our minds are constantly in flux. We're wondering about what we need to do, what we didn't do, and what people are expecting us to do next, and what we want to do. Our minds never slow down, but that is so important, to quiet our mind and let that settle. And that's when we truly get some peace and some some nurturing back to our spirit. We're going to go over a couple of mindfulness techniques. Hopefully none of them are brand new to you. I'm hoping that you're familiar with most of them, but it'll be a reminder. And if it's an introduction, great. And I wish I would have highlighted this one, connecting with others. I spoke with a client recently, and I asked what she would say to people if she could help other post-stroke survivors. And she said, don't isolate, connect with other people. Don't wait until you're desperate for help. Start doing it right away. Start connecting with others. And I encourage you to reach out to the Norton Neuroscience Resource Center. They have tremendous classes that you can do through Zoom, and that's a form of connection. At least you can be with other people who may have suffered or experiencing similar emotions. Let's go into a couple mindfulness techniques. And if mindfulness is new to any of you, mindfulness simply is described as being aware of your breath and just making yourself aware of the present moment through a lens of non-judgment and appreciation. So we tend to want to have a negative bias. So it's important to remember we don't have to judge things. We just have to accept it. And that takes a different lens to look through and practice. But some of these tips will help you hopefully get to that place. And this one I've seen on TV since with COVID, and mental health is now fortunately becoming more of a topic people are willing to share about. And a lot of the experts are talking about our breath and breathing. And this is just a simple technique you can do anywhere and doesn't cost anything, and hopefully will give you some relief. It's just making an inhale through your nostrils and then exhale through your mouth. So it's just, I do a count of 4 just to help build some rhythm. That you breathe in and hold it, and then breathe out. When I'm doing this, I do this on my daily walks. And when I'm inhaling, I'm really asking, bring in something good and that I'm grateful for to fill me up with that. And then when I exhale, trust me, it's all the self-criticism I give myself, the negative self-talk, that's got to leave, all the toxicity. I'm just trying to get it all out of me and just filling up as much as I can with all the things I'm grateful for. And I want to encourage you that this is something that is most effective if it's practiced. And what I mean by that is, if you wait until you're stressed out or in a situation and start breathing, you most likely are going to be breathing too rapidly to do this. But your mind is going to respond to that in a way that something's wrong and panicked. So I like to practice this on a daily basis, several times a day if possible. I've learned that to build it into a routine, it's best to do it if you can think about doing this after something you're already doing. If you're already making a pot of coffee in the morning, while it's brewing, practice some breathing. You don't need to be stressed out to do it. Just practice it to give yourself, make it a part of your life. When you add it on to something you're already doing, it's more likely to become a habit. So just think about that as where you can add this into your day. And this is another good grounding for me. And when I say grounding, it means just center yourself to get yourself in line with your body, mind, and spirit. Be where your feet are. Often when I'm feeling anxious in a moment or a situation, and I'm thinking ahead of where I'm at, I always remind myself, just be where your feet are. It's the simplest way to get calm. Be present in the moment. And usually when you're able to calm yourself down and understand exactly where you are, it's usually you're able to take some deep breaths and recognize that there's some good things going on all around you. One of the grounding exercises that I do, again, always when I'm walking, because it's easy for me to walk out the door with a list of things of what I should be doing instead of taking a walk. I do this, it's called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we're going to be incorporating all of our senses, because when we take into account all of our senses, we can't help but be present. So here's an example. It's just a little chart here to say 5 things you can see. So as you're looking around your house, what are the things that you see? Or if you're outside, what are the things you notice and see? Just try and count 5 things. And then 4 things you can feel, whether it's the chair you're sitting in, the ground underneath your feet, what is it? Can you list 4 things that you feel? So we're going to go through our feeling sense. And then 3 things you can hear. And you'll be surprised at the things that you tune out the white noise behind you, that you might be, learn to appreciate the slowing down and paying attention. And two things you can smell. And then I always like to say one positive thing about yourself, and hopefully you've got more than one, but remind yourself of something positive about yourself. This acronym PEACE comes in handy also. It's just a reminder of how to keep yourself centered. P is for pause. And I think this is just in general a good idea to, especially when something's coming up and we feel anxious or angry, or we want to respond to someone for a difficult situation, is to just give yourself a chance to pause. And you don't have to pause even for a minute. Sometimes 5 seconds, 2 seconds is enough for you to realign yourself. So P is for pause. And then E is for exhale. Just allow yourself to, again, breathe out whatever that anxious feeling is. A, again, is for acknowledging. Acknowledge, accept, and allow it. This is not asking you to give into it or feel defeated. You just have to accept that it's going on. C is for compassion. And C is for compassion for yourself first. Always be kind to yourself. And then compassion for others. I use the motto, assume innocence. Assume that people are coming from a good place, especially after you've had an event like a stroke. People are going to say, gosh, but you look so good. What's wrong? You should be doing this. You should be doing that. It may not feel good to hear that. Assume innocence. Assume they're coming from a place of well-intention, that they're wanting the best for you, and they just don't know any better. You can take the time to explain to them that you really don't feel good. You may look great, but you don't feel good. But that might be exhausting, and not everyone deserves to hear your story. So just share as much as you want. Be kind to yourself and to others. And E is for engage. And this goes back to connection. Allow yourself to engage with others. And again, isolation is going to create a storm of negative reactions. So as quickly as you can, in small steps, get yourself in a way to connect, whether it's on the phone or through a Zoom meeting or a Zoom class with the Resource Center. Try and allow yourself to get back and connect with people. I've used the word intention several times through this discussion, and I wanted to spend a little more time on it. It's really an important word because it's easy for us to have these hopes and dreams, but if we don't have any intention, we're not going to get from where we are to where we want to be without any intention. They say the journey of 1,000 steps starts with the first step, and that first step requires intention. So a word or a phrase, and an intention that will help focus you where you want to go will bring some attention to where you want to go. So those two words, intention and attention. And I often have suggested to clients, and I do myself, write an intention on every day on my bathroom mirror with a dry erase marker or a Post-it note that allows me to see what we're thinking and really help me understand that I need to have some intention if I want to stay on track. So examples would be focus. Maybe focus would be a word, or kindness, or gratitude. Whatever I'm feeling that morning, I need to work on or be intentional about. And then when the days come in a tidal wave like they do, and there's ups and downs and unexpected, unpredictable things, I just pause and go back to that word, and it helps ground me and bring me back to where it is I want to put my attention. Another practice that I have found very beneficial and life-changing is to practice gratitude. And one method is to write down 3 things that you're grateful for at the end of each day. By practicing this, if you're looking for something good that's happening, because I will offer that there are good and bad happening all the time at the same time, but we are wired to look for what's bad. And I think ancestrally we had to have this fear-based perspective so that we could protect ourselves from the lion behind the rock that was going to come out and devour us. Again, that doesn't serve us anymore. So we can change that. We can change that mindset to looking for the good, because it's out there at the same time. And so if we look for what's good, we will be able to build some gratitude. And I mentioned the word practice. It is a practice with intention every day. Here's a gratitude prescription for you. You have to take a dose every morning, maybe by looking around you and trying to find that first thing you're grateful for. But be careful, it may cause a shift in perspective, and I will offer that it most likely will, and it causes feelings of abundance and contentment. And there will, my experience has been that it also results in decreased feelings of fear and anxiety. So choosing wellness. You know, we talked at the beginning of this presentation about getting stretched outside of our comfort zones. And I understand that can be thrilling and frightening, but we don't always get to choose what comes our way. I'm sure none of you would have chosen to have a stroke, but we can always choose how we're going to respond. We can make the best of where we are at that moment. And that by practicing some of these methods and finding time to be quiet each day will allow you to show up in a way that you're choosing to be your best self. So what would it look like for you to choose on how you respond? If you want to take a moment and just think about your preferred future, what would that look like? Try and visualize, what does that look like for you? And what little shift will it take for you to get from where you are to that? And don't expect big shifts to be lasting. I'm talking about half-degree shifts. You know, a 2-degree shift is significant. And over time, that adds up in a positive way or negative way. So like I mentioned, that journey starts with the first step. Our minds follow our behavior. So sometimes we have to somewhat fake it till you make it. As much as I hate that saying, you fake it till you make it, because our minds eventually, after you start getting up and doing that first step, your mind's going to recognize that as a habit, and it will start driving that force. So it's that first step is the one that you are required to take. I just want to leave you with the thought that you don't control your thoughts. You just have to stop letting them control you. And I thank you all for joining us, and I wish you the best in your recovery and the future that you've got in front of you. Thank you.